so hard for people to quit their job. If you left today, your company would move on without you. We are heading into a new decade, a new season for you to evaluate your career and take the steps needed to advance strategically. And it all starts with determining whether you should quit your job. This is one episode of a 10-part series called Should I Quit My Job that will take you through evaluating yourself, managing external impacts on your career, evaluating your current reality, and creating a plan to move forward. My name is Julia, and I am the career strategist behind the Ride the Tide Collective podcast, where we equip ambitious professionals to strategize and take action to advance their career. Welcome to episode 7 of our first season, Culture Eats Strategy. For those of you who haven't read any management books by Peter Drucker, can you even call yourself a professional? One of his most famous quotes is "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." Having been in at least 2 cultures where the intention and the reality were wildly different, this statement is absolutely true. Drucker wasn't saying that strategy isn't important to the success of a company. He was saying that if you don't know and understand the culture of your company, you can have the best strategy out there and nothing will happen because your employees won't be able to execute. For example, let's say you have a company with a new leader who knows the company externally. This is based on the news, industry reports, and probably gossip. They get into the role expecting the organization to be collaborative and team-oriented, like a family. But in reality, everyone is competing with each other, and there is no trust between colleagues or divisions. These are 2 wildly different cultures. If the new leader didn't take the real culture into consideration when developing their strategy for the company, it would fail. If they created a strategy that relied on everyone working together, they would be mediating more than leading. Do they need to conform to current culture? Absolutely not. They can and should put expectations in place to help shift the culture in a way that will help the goals of the strategy be accomplished. They might keep some of the competitiveness around to help elevate the employees, but they would do it in a way that is friendly and not combative. Why does this distinction matter to your career? Well, when you start a new position in a new company or on a new team, the culture you are walking into is one of the biggest risks you will take. Similar to our leader, what you think you know and the reality might be different. What if you are a competitive employee who is put into a highly collaborative and team-oriented culture? It might be hard for you to adapt at first. It doesn't mean you wouldn't adapt, and it doesn't mean you won't be successful. But you need to be aware of when your strengths are a mismatch for company culture. There are 3 situations where a misunderstood culture can be difficult for you to manage, but it's not hopeless. The first is when the printed culture of the company, probably what you read on the website, and in some cases what you see on social media, is not reality. I see this more often than any other situation. A client will come to me and say, "I read this company's website and I love the culture they have created. Look at these photos and their core values and the pillars. Wow." I hate to squash that excitement, but the reality is, how do you know that culture is real? Companies want to create a positive image for their clients, their customers, and their employees to connect with. But what is written on paper isn't always real. If a company has recently gone through a leadership change or merger, their new vision and values might be where they strive to be, but might not be the current reality. When a company is going through a culture shift, you will have what is known as the old guard and the new guard. In quite a few situations, the old guard will end up leaving because they don't like the changes being implemented. This is a missed opportunity for many people. I have seen this happen primarily in more experienced generations where change can be scary. But you have an opportunity. If your company is going through a culture shift, regardless of the reason, use it as an opportunity for yourself. There might be new roles opening up or projects that allow you to grow your skills. If you really don't like the direction the company is headed, make sure you can articulate why and then be able to articulate what you are looking for in your next company. When you talk to someone from your ideal company and you're impressed by their values and the company culture, you always want to ask how they are displaying the values and the culture on a day-to-day basis. Make sure they provide specific examples. Companies who live their values are usually transparent about them. You might find evidence of this on their social media pages and specifically within LinkedIn, where employees tend to post about their work environment. The second situation is that you were misled about the culture of the company or team, or possibly you weren't able to read between the lines during the interview process. Sometimes hiring managers or human resources staff will spin the culture of a company to make it look enticing to potential hires. In some cases, they might not know the exact culture of the team, or if they're relatively new themselves, they might be feeding you the culture line that was given to them. This can be a precarious situation because your expectations and reality won't match. Similarly, the language may have been there from the team members in the interview process, but your excitement or possibly desperation to get the job may have allowed you to overlook their word choice. I was in a situation where I wanted to get out of my current position because the leadership was extremely toxic. I was interviewing for the new position, and I remember them saying things like, "We have a new leader and we think it'll work out well. There are a lot of new members on the team, so there's an opportunity for collaboration. We are excited that you will bring a fresh perspective to this role and the department." On the surface, those seemed like harmless statements, but here's what they really meant. The new leader was brought in to clean house and make immediate changes with little to no regard for staff well-being. There were a lot of new members on the team, but everyone else had been fired or quit because of the toxic environment. Most of those who stayed were jaded and upset because their friends and longtime colleagues had left abruptly. And finally, the fresh perspective they wanted was because so many of the staff that stayed were set in their ways that they wanted new blood to come in and make change with little support from team members. It was a mess. I definitely could have left this situation and been justified, but I also knew it was an important role to my growth as a leader and my career trajectory at the time. So I stayed. I built relationships with everyone and became a trusted colleague, even among the most skeptical of staff members. I learned from my previous roles what worked well, what didn't work, and how to build effective teams. The department went through many more significant changes, but I stuck it out because I saw opportunity. When I finally left the role, it wasn't because I didn't enjoy it or I wasn't doing well. I was probably at the top of my game at that point and really doing work I enjoyed. I had surrounded myself with trusted colleagues, and there was a momentum in the department that was infectious. I left because life happened, and the overall culture of the organization couldn't match the awesomeness happening in our department. Which leads me to situation number 3. Your team culture might be great, but your company culture is in the toilet. In my case, I was planning to move into a new role at my organization because I wanted a new challenge, and there was promise of flexibility in the role that I needed because of the season of life I was in at the time. Unfortunately, the antiquated ways of the overall organization got in the way of the flexibility I needed from the role, and I declined. In a perfect world, the company culture and the team culture not only align, but both are positive and fit your needs and expectations as an employee. In reality, this isn't always the case. For me, I'd rather have a good team with a strong leader who can advocate to the larger organization. I've been in both situations, and this is definitely my preference. The larger company can usually be managed fairly easily unless the policies go against your own values and needs. For example, you can and should build relationships with people in other parts of the organization. This will help you do your job more efficiently and effectively when you need to call on them. Knowing their names, what motivates them, really getting to know them will create goodwill when you have a question. Appreciating their efforts when they help you will also go a long way. I once ended up in a company that I thought was much more progressive in its policies. But the reality was the organization was light years behind in creating an environment for ambitious professionals to thrive. I quickly realized that the values I held as an employee did not match the values of the larger organization. This became a point of contention that lasted through my tenure in the role. If you listen to episode 3 of this season, you know how valuable being able to articulate your values are for your career success. The situations outlined in this episode support and solidify your need to understand who you are and what you need to be successful. Don't get me wrong, this process takes time and experience. What worked for you in one season might not work for you in the next season. The important part is that you can identify those shifts in yourself and make the appropriate changes if needed in your career. Culture can make or break a company. Happy employees mean happy customers, which translates to higher profits, if that's the goal, which it usually is. These days, you are seeing more and more companies of all sizes start to embrace this concept because employees today are more interested in being happy, having balance, and making an impact than they are about the loyalty they have to an organization who doesn't respect their values. Which scenario are you in? Now, I didn't touch on having a good team and a good company culture, but if you fall into this situation, congratulations. But also make sure to identify why it's good for you. When you are ready to move up in the organization, you can articulate clearly why you enjoy it. Or if you make the choice to move on, you can ask good questions around what culture you are looking for in a company and team.